I will turn it over to Rachel.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this presentation. I'm glad to be here on this damp Saturday morning inside, thankfully. So thank you to Langley Environmental Partners Society for inviting me to present this webinar. I'm pretty excited about sharing some ideas with you this morning, and I hope that it's interesting. So we'll keep going here. If we possibly can. My computer doesn't want to cooperate with me. There we go. So first off, I'll start out with a little bit about the Watersheds Coalition. We're a registered charity governed by a volunteer board of directors, and we consist of a team of professionals who work with communities, universities, volunteers, federal and provincial governments, First Nations, and other nonprofit organizations. We work on environmental projects designed to conserve and restore watersheds that provide benefits to community. We have a strong regional focus, the Fraser Valley, BC, and as local leaders, we take action to conserve, restore, and enhance watersheds and community values to benefit people and nature. We have 6 interconnected program areas: habitat restoration, environmental monitoring and mapping, environmental education, watershed planning, agriculture and environment, climate change, and carbon offsets. So feel free to contact us if you have any interest in learning more. And we gratefully acknowledge the financial support from the province of BC and Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation for our work in the agriculture and environment pillar of our programs. So I encourage you to say hello in the chat. Tell us where you are located, whether or not you have a small farm or horses or animals, and how you heard about the webinar. It would be great if you are willing to share that. And I'll tell you a little bit about me while you're doing that. So I graduated from the University of the Fraser Valley with a Bachelor of Science major in biology. I've worked for the Watersheds Coalition since 2009, connecting with landowners, organizing meetings, developing riparian restoration plans, environmental monitoring, and managing our field team. I'm also a professional agrologist. What is agrology, you may ask? So agrologists do many things, and in my case, it's using agricultural or natural sciences to advise on the health of aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. So I have a 5-acre farm at the base of Vedder Mountain in Chilliwack, the traditional territory of the Stalo peoples, with a tributary to Stewart Creek running alongside of it. We have 4 horses on the property, including my 8-year-old warm-blood mare Twiggy, who you see with me in these pictures. So I'll briefly go through an outline of topics that we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what is a watershed, what is water management, what is water pollution caused by, how to reduce water pollution and support biodiversity on farms through 3 different areas. So we're going to look at water management, manure management, and pasture management. So what is a watershed, you may ask yourself? It's defined as an area of land that separates waters flowing to different rivers, basins, or seas. Everyone lives in a watershed. As a part of our agriculture and environment program, the Watershed Coalition aims to help farmers understand how their practices can affect watershed health. In this presentation, we explore watershed and water management, as well as pasture and manure management, because all of these things can contribute to a reduction in pollution and support biodiversity. Each farmer, each person has a role to play in watershed health, and many small changes can really add up over time. So watershed management is the process of managing human activities and natural resources on a landscape basis while considering social, economic, and environmental values, as well as local community interests and issues such as the impacts of climate change. our activities on the land impact the health and sustainability of natural resources and can threaten how much water remains available. So these diagrams are just showing how watershed management tries to use an integrated approach of including environment, economy, and society. What is water pollution? Sources of groundwater and surface water pollution are usually indicated by point or non-point. Point source pollution comes from a single source, such as a pipe or a manure pile. And non-point source pollution is the result of many small pollution sources. It is also often called runoff. So this picture shows many of the interrelationships that occur among soil, manure, crops, and water, and how non-point source pollution can occur. So water management at the property level is very important. It's vital to maintain clean water for people and animals by keeping animals out of waterways and locating manure piles and chemicals away from waterways or wells, and creating and maintaining riparian areas. The chances of water contamination and pollution are reduced. So this is an example of how to manage your property in order to reduce potential water contamination. So in the diagram here, you see the residence and the septic field are up close to the road, and the farm has been divided into multiple areas, pasture 1, 2, 3, and some heavy use and seasonal areas, as well as run-in sheds and an outdoor riding arena. You also may notice that there's a stream towards the back of the property, and that has been fenced off in order to protect that more sensitive area and keep animals out, to keep them healthy and the streamside area healthy as well. You also may notice there's screening vegetation added on either side of the property. This is always a nice privacy area and a chance to help biodiversity by planting multiple different species along that area. When you design and plan your farm layout, you can reduce the potential for contamination or water pollution. This will increase your property stability and maintain health and safety of people and livestock to ensure compliance with the AEM code. And I think this might be our opportunity for our first poll question. So the poll question is, what does the AEM code stand for? So AEM. So if you know the answer, you can type it into the chat. I'll give you a couple seconds there, just in case anyone wants to be a star student and give the answer. All right, I'll give you the answer. We'll make it easy for you. First question of the day, it's early in the morning. So the answer is the Agricultural Environmental Management Code. The Code of Practice for Agricultural Environmental Management, or the AEM code, is a minister's regulation under the Environmental Management Act that regulates storage and use of manure and other agricultural byproducts and materials on agricultural operations. This code was recently updated in 2019. The purpose of the code is to provide minimum setbacks from drinking water sources, property borders, etc., to prevent pollution discharges into watercourses or groundwater, and prevent contaminants from crossing property boundaries. It also prevents over-application of nitrogen and provides additional regulations for high-risk areas and conditions, such as the Lower Mainland, where we have high rainfall amounts. Setback requirements for manure and compost storage, livestock rearing, nutrient application, and composting are employed. They protect drinking water and water courses from the effects related to agricultural operations. So basically the message here is all water is connected. Ditches or waterways lead to rivers, which lead to oceans. And when water courses are healthy, anyone playing in or living in the water, i.e. kids or fish, stay healthy too. So here's our first example of water management at the farm level. So here we're looking at capturing and reusing rainwater. Capturing rainwater on your farm can prevent excess runoff. 1 inch of rain on a 20-foot by 50-foot barn can produce almost 2,400 liters of water. This is equivalent to 1.5 average size hot tubs. So this is a great method for preventing farm surface water runoff from contaminating water sources and waterways and community drinking sources. This second example of water management at the farm level is preventing and slowing surface water runoff. So on the left-hand side of the photo, you see the crop, and then in the middle, you see a grass buffer strip. And then on the right-hand side, you see a riparian buffer or a streamside buffer. And by planting watercourse buffers, they help to capture rainwater and slow the water down. The grass buffer strip will prevent runoff water from reaching the waterway and give sediment a chance to settle out before water enters the stream. These buffer areas and riparian areas can do a lot to support biodiversity, from supporting pollinators and birds and fish and other wildlife. It provides food and nesting sources and hiding places, and they can also be really beautiful and add to the farm's aesthetic value. So, can you guys spot the stream or watercourse in this picture? No, probably not, and that's a good thing. That means that it's protected with riparian vegetation and fencing, and this keeps the stream and livestock healthy. Having this riparian area is a way to minimize siltation and pollution of watercourses. Using a hedgerow or a buffer strip or a shelter belt, which are all basically the same thing, along waterways, can prevent erosion through a network of soil binding roots, and it really gives time for silt to settle out and not enter a waterway. It's a very valuable and diverse habitat for many species. We all know water equals life, and these are highly valuable areas in terms of biodiversity. We live in a really wet climate here in the Lower Mainland, and we can suffer from soil runoff, and soil loss on farms is a real issue that we all deal with. Soil then sloughs into the watercourse and can cause siltation problems, preventing fish from seeing food sources and covering or smothering fish eggs and spawning habitat. So here we have an example of a stream and two very different streamside areas. So on the left-hand side, we have a streamside area that probably needs a little bit of improvement. And on the right-hand side, we have a functioning streamside area. So a lack of streamside vegetation can definitely pose some risks. One that comes to mind for me is loss of property. You can see it here in this photo of just soil erosion and sloughing is happening. Water contamination, reduced flood control ability, and it can contribute to disease and pathogens entering the stream and really impacting downstream water users. The intact streamside vegetation on the right-hand side poses a lot of benefits. Roots that hold the soil in place and prevent erosion and land loss. It may function as a windbreak and provide shade for livestock and people. Vegetation catches the overland water and filters out contaminants and can reduce the instance of disease and pathogens in a stream. And like I said, it provides food and shelter for birds and other wildlife, which can provide viewing opportunities for you to see the beautiful wildlife in your area. By creating and maintaining riparian areas, you can prevent or reduce erosion of your farm's most precious resource, which is the soil. So now we're going to look at manure management on the farm level. composting your horse's manure is simple and can save you money, or any livestock manure for that matter. Manure can easily be composted using methods that are customized to your farm, and with a little energy and a one-time investment, your manure problem can be turned into a valuable compost, a natural soil enhancer for your pastures. So the step number one is to calculate the amount of manure you think you're gonna have. Step number 2 is to consider the location. This is probably the most important step. Knowing what the regulations in the Code of Practice for Environmental Management are with regards to distance to watercourses, wells, paddocks, etc., is very important. Also, it's important to consider location because you don't want to have to move this. Hopefully it's a permanent structure. You build it once and you're done. So step number 3 is to design the system. It's important to design a system that's going to work for you and your farm. Most small lot farmers can benefit from a closed bin system, which is what you see here in this picture. And you need to consider the rainfall amounts in your area because most areas of the Lower Mainland need a covered manure composting system. Step 4 is then to manage the compost by actively turning it. This is the key to reducing it by up to 2/3 and producing a weed-free product that will be able to use as a soil enhancer on your pastures. It also helps encourage the pile to heat up, which can destroy the parasites that affect livestock and stop that cycle, which is a real benefit for the animals. And then step 5 is to finish the compost, and it can be spread over your pastures. It enhances the growth of forage crops and can be used in your garden even for delicious vegetables and beautiful flowers as well. So now we're going to look at pasture management on the farm level. So there's 3 main steps to managing your pasture. You want to evaluate your soil. So you want to test your soil to determine the pH level and identify any nutrient deficiencies in your pasture. This will save you money in the long run because you may not actually need to add any fertilizers to your pasture. Soil testing in the Lower Mainland can be done through Element Labs in Surrey. It's a simple process of collecting some soil and bringing it to the lab. The second step is to consider overseeding, addressing any bare spots and thin areas. This will help to increase forage and cut down on hay costs, as well as keep any weeds at bay. And then the last important step is to add lime. While adding fertilizer might be unnecessary, most of the time using lime is crucial where soil is acidic or has a low pH, especially in high rainfall areas such as the Lower Mainland. When soil pH is low, nutrients in the soil can't be used by plants and the beneficial organisms aren't as active either. So it's a really cost-effective way of correcting your pH, and you do this before you even focus on fertilizers. So there are many benefits to using composted horse manure on your pastures or composted manure of any kind. It allows for a slow release of nitrogen, which the plants use as fertilizer. It can improve the soil structure and increase moisture retention, which is especially important now that we're seeing very long, dry summers and drought. It will help increase the presence of microorganisms in the soil, which help nutrients become more easily available to the plants. And it also increases the earthworms and other macroorganism activity, whose tunneling can help improve water infiltration, and they amend the soil with their castings. So there's lots of great benefits to this. So one key thing to note is you need to check before you spread. So in the Lower Mainland, application of nutrients or composted manures is prohibited in November, December, and January. So if you want to spread in October, February, or March, you need to complete a self-risk assessment. So self-risk assessments allow farmers to determine if applying nutrient may lead to contaminated runoff. So you can access these self-risk assessment applications on the BC government website under nutrient management. It's a quick thing to do, to just type in a couple of details and it will tell you whether or not it's safe to spread or not. All right, here's our second poll question. So this is an easy one if anyone wants to answer in the chat. It's a true or false question. So true or false, private property owners and government agencies are mandated by law to control certain weeds that occur on their property or jurisdiction. So what do you guys think? True or false?
One person has said true so far, and 2 people have said false so far.
Okay, well, the answer is it's true. BC has a Weed Control Act, and it designates a list of invasive plants as noxious weeds at the regional and provincial level. Private property owners and government agencies are mandated by law to control the species that occur on their property or jurisdiction that are determined to be noxious weeds. Weeds are a significant threat to biodiversity and can be a significant threat to livestock. So the 2 weeds that are shown here, creeping buttercup and tansy ragwort, both contain toxins that are quite bad for many different livestock. They have liver damaging alkaloids and can cause real issue if the livestock eat them. So it's incredibly important to manage your weeds and control them. And so identifying and controlling weeds is key, and managing your weeds can take many forms. So rotational grazing of your pastures can help to reduce weeds. Regular overseeding and mowing can help reduce weeds by preventing weeds from going to seed and crowding them out, preventing space for them to grow in the first place. It's really important to have a look around your property and check for poisonous weeds like tansy ragwort. If you find this on your property, you can use gloves to pull and bag it and send it to the landfill. Less noxious weeds can be kept under control by mowing, like I said, before they go to seed, and creating an environment that really prevents them from forming in the first place. Tansy and buttercup both tend to like really wet, acidic conditions. So by liming your pastures and spreading composted manure, you'll help to create conditions that don't foster those weeds in the first place. And a couple of more suggestions for pasture management at the farm level. So this is a big one, but have sacrifice areas for your animals during times when you need to rest your pastures. So this is critical because grass plants can go dormant during drought period and in the winter. So you don't want to have animals out on pasture doing damage when there's not active growing. You don't want to graze your pastures down too low. Once 50% or so of a plant is eaten, its roots will stop growing and it's just not productive. You really want to prevent your grass from going to seed because that significantly limits or ends their growth cycle, and it reduces available forage for animals. And I think a big one is to mow right after you rotate your animals out of the pasture. And that will set up a nice even growth for the next time that they're back in that pasture. And then to also either pick up manure or harrow to break it up once the animals have been moved out. That will help to spread around nutrients and get a more even growth on the pasture. All right, and that's just a list of references from this presentation. So if anyone's interested, I can provide references for them, or they can have a look here. there's a lot of great material out there to do more research if you're keen and interested. And questions. So thanks everybody. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Rachel. That was a really great presentation. There is one question in the chat. I believe this is about the AEM code. Marcel asks, Rachel, does this code specify distances as to how far we should stay away from streams when fertilizing, tilling, or pasture use?
The AEM code does specify distances for fertilizer, as far as I know, but it's more so looking at rearing livestock. So like if livestock are being fed or reared, looking at how far away they are from the stream side, and then structures. So any kind of composting structure or manure piles, like if you're using field storage for manure that you're going to then spread on your fields, you need to have that set back a certain distance from the stream side, and you can only store it on your pasture for a certain length of time. So I know that the code is quite a bit of legalese. It's long and there's a lot of detail to it. So it's definitely something that there are people at the Ministry of Agriculture who can help answer questions about the code because it can be quite a read. So I think if I didn't answer your question, then feel free to reach out to me afterwards, but I can put you in touch with people at the Ministry of Agriculture who can give you some advice about how to implement and use the code to protect your land.
Okay, great. And there's another question. Natasha asks, are there any other acts, regulations that also provide setback requirements in addition to the AEM code?
On farmland?
I'm thinking so.
Yeah, I mean, I think the AEM code is the most farm specific. There are riparian area regulations, but they don't necessarily always apply to farmland. So yeah, I don't know if I answered that question. Definitely follow up with me if I didn't answer that question correctly, and I'll find out the answer for you.
Okay, great. And Marcel has said, thanks, Rachel. So, and has also asked, just curious, I know ditches eventually will lead to a stream. Do we treat them the same?
Definitely. All water is totally connected, and ditches often were meandering streams that were straightened or aligned in order to have land that was parceled off so it can be sold and farmed. And those ditches are often very productive salmon streams. I mean, here just in front of my house, there's what's called Wilson Road Ditch, and it supports probably upwards of 50 spawning pairs of coho every year. And it doesn't look like much, but it provides a lot of habitat for fish and wildlife. So definitely I would treat a ditch like a stream.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if anyone else has any questions, you're welcome to put them down there in the chat. And while we're waiting to see if anyone has any more questions, I'll just mention that we want to thank everyone for coming to this webinar. We hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot. You can let us know what you thought about it by filling out a webinar feedback form, which you will receive in your email later today. And also, if you are a small farm owner or a horse owner or landowner in the Langley or Abbotsford areas, we also invite you to fill out another survey. LEPS is gathering information about concerns and solutions related to water quality in these areas. And you're also invited to our next webinar, which is on March 8th, which is Salmon Safe Certification for farms. So if you have a farm and you are interested in getting something to recognize things you have done to improve water quality, this will be the webinar for you. And I see a few people in the chat just saying thank you. Very interesting and great presentation, which it was. So yeah, we have gone a little over 10:30. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions. Would they be able to email you, Rachel?
Oh, yes, definitely. So
Okay.
my email and phone number is here on the screen, and you can share that with everyone as well, for sure. If they have follow-up questions or they want to know more, definitely contact me. Thank you so much, everybody. Really enjoyed presenting. This is a topic that fascinates me. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to present this for us, Rachel. It was really great, very informative. So I guess we will leave that off there. I hope everybody has a great morning and enjoyed this presentation. So
thanks.
Yeah,
okay.
take care, everyone.
Bye, thank you.